Sinbad had promised himself many times that he was done with sailing. After each voyage he would return home, kiss the ground, and tell his friends that the sea was too wild and the world too full of surprises. Yet his heart was shaped like a ship's sail. It always caught the wind of curiosity. So after a season of peace in his warm home by the harbour, he once again stood on a wooden deck, watching his city shrink into the distance while the ocean opened before him like a moving mirror. For days the ship travelled beneath a sky so clear it looked freshly washed, and at night the stars glittered like tiny lanterns hung across a dark tent. Sinbad listened to the creak of ropes and the steady slap of waves, and he learned again that the sea had many moods. Sometimes it was gentle as a lullaby, and sometimes it grew restless for no clear reason, as if it were remembering old storms. One afternoon, when the air was calm and the sun sat high, a strange wind rose suddenly, sharp and swirling. The sail snapped, the ship tilted, and the water beneath them churned. Sailors shouted and pulled at ropes, trying to steer away from jagged rocks that appeared ahead like broken teeth. Before the captain could turn the ship, a heavy wave lifted the hull and hurled it toward the coastline. Wood cracked. The world spun. Sinbad grabbed a rail, but the deck shifted beneath him and he was thrown into the sea. When Sinbad surfaced, coughing and blinking salt from his eyes, the ship was already breaking apart. He saw floating planks and barrels and heard distant cries. He forced himself not to panic, searching for something to hold. Near his hand found a thick plank, and he clung to it as the current dragged him away from the wreck. After a long struggle, his feet scraped sand, and he stumbled onto shore, soaked and trembling but alive. The island was quiet and strange. It was not a friendly beach near a village, but a rocky land with steep cliffs and scattered trees leaning away from the wind. Sinbad walked carefully, calling out once, yet no answer came. He found a trickle of fresh water and drank, then ate a few dates he had kept in his pouch. If I stay calm, he told himself, a way will appear. As he explored, he noticed pale bones lying in the sun, some far too large to belong to any ordinary animal. Above a cliff he spotted a nest the size of a small house, made of thick branches. Sinbad remembered sailors' tales of the roc, a giant bird so strong it could lift elephants. He had once laughed at such stories, but now, looking at that enormous nest, he did not laugh at all. By late morning, hunger pushed him onward. He climbed a rocky ridge and saw, beyond it, a deep valley sunk into the island like a bowl. Mist hovered over it, and the walls were steep and sharp. Sinbad descended carefully until the air became cooler and still. On the valley floor, stones glittered in the dim light. At first he thought it was dew, but when he bent down, his breath caught. They were diamonds, scattered everywhere like frozen starlight. Sinbad's heart raced. He had heard rumours of a valley of diamonds, but he had also heard the warning, serpents lived among the stones, long as tree trunks, hiding in shade and striking without sound. Sinbad forced himself to breathe slowly. He did not run. He listened. The valley was silent, but it was not the peaceful silence of an empty place. It was the careful silence of a place that did not want to be disturbed. He looked for a way out. The valley walls rose too steep to climb, like the sides of a stone well. He called once, hoping for a miracle, and his voice vanished into distance. Sinbad sat on a rock and thought hard. Then he remembered a trick from old merchant stories, to gather diamonds from dangerous valleys. People sometimes threw pieces of meat down. Diamonds would stick to the meat, and great birds would swoop in, seize it, and carry it back up. The merchants would then scare the birds away and collect the diamonds. Sinbad looked up. High above, large birds circled, their shadows moving slowly across the cliff walls. He checked his pouch. He had little food left, but he did have a small piece of dried meat. It felt risky to give up food, yet it felt riskier to stay trapped. He pressed the meat against the ground where diamonds lay thick and rolled it gently until several stones clung to it. Then he placed it on a flat rock and stepped back, holding his breath. The bird circled once, twice, and one dropped like an arrow. Its talons snapped shut around the meat. With a powerful beat of wings, it rose and climbed toward the rim of the valley. Sinbad watched until the bird was a dark shape against the sky, and hope warmed his chest. Where birds could reach, he might reach too. Still, he had to move carefully. He gathered only a small handful of diamonds into his pouch, enough to prove his story if he lived, but not so many that greed would slow him. He stayed in open ground and avoided deep shadows where a serpent might rest. When he heard a faint sliding sound, he froze until it faded, then continued, patient and quiet. Soon he found another strip of meat among bits of wreckage that the sea had thrown into the valley, perhaps part of a lost bundle. He thanked the sea in his heart, then pressed diamonds into the meat again, making a larger bundle. He tied a long strip of cloth around it, leaving a tail, and wrapped the tail around his wrist so he could grip without slipping. His plan was dangerous, but the valley offered no gentler path. When the circling bird returned, the air shifted as its wings stirred wind into the stillness. Sinbad's courage wavered, then steadied. He placed the meat bundle on a rock and crouched low. The bird swooped down, seized the bundle and lifted off. As it rose, Sinbad held tight to the cloth tail. He did not yank or thrash. He let the bird's strength do the lifting, and he kept his body as still as he could, like a sailor trusting a rope in a storm. The ground dropped away. Sinbad's stomach rose into his throat. The cliff wall rushed past, close enough that he could see scratches in the stone. He focused on breathing and on the steady pull above him. Up and up he went, carried by the bird's powerful flight. The wind pressed against his face. His arms burned, but he counted slow breaths instead of counting fear. At last, the bird reached the rim of the valley and flapped toward its nest. As it passed over a wide rocky ledge, Sinbad loosened the cloth from his wrist and dropped onto the stone. He landed hard, but the earth held him. He lay still for a moment, feeling the solid ground beneath him as if it were a gift, and listening to his own heartbeat settle. Then he crawled away from the nest because he did not want to meet the rock itself. He followed the ridge until he found a path leading down to the far shoreline. The sun was lowering, painting the sea with copper light, and Sinbad's throat tightened with relief when he spotted a sail on the horizon. He gathered dry grass and twigs and lit a small fire. Smoke rose into the evening air, thin at first, then stronger. He waved his arms and kept the fire alive. The ship turned, slowly at first, then more clearly, and headed toward shore. When the sailors reached him, they stared at the dusty man with the salt-stiff cloak and the bright stones in his pouch. Sinbad did not boast. He thanked them, accepted water, and climbed aboard with gratitude that felt larger than the ocean. Days later, when Sinbad finally returned to his city, the markets and lanterns looked brighter than he remembered. He gave gifts to the sailors who saved him and shared his treasure with the poor, because he knew riches feel lighter when they become kindness. And when children asked him about the Valley of Diamonds, he smiled gently and told them it was beautiful. Yes, but beauty without wisdom can be dangerous. The valley taught me, he would say, that the best treasure is not what you carry in your pouch, but a calm mind, a patient heart, and the courage to choose the right step at the right time.